as the founding father with the greatest contribution to the U.S. Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson left a special mark on American ideals. As an eloquent theorist of liberalism, and at the same time one of the largest slave owners in the American South, he was a controversial man. Some would say a hypocrite. In his years as ambassador to France, Thomas Jefferson immersed himself in European culture, particularly music, theater, and his lifelong obsession, architecture. For him, France, the flower and fragrance of European culture, was a journey of exploration. There were many things that he had seen in France and wanted his young nation, America, to internalize. In particular, Thomas Jefferson saw in Europe's and especially France's history and its internal conflicts between classes, between ideas, an education that America must absorb. But Jefferson was among, if not the leader of, the founding fathers who envisioned America as the beacon of human liberal ideals, the culmination of humanity's march towards assertive morality. To a large extent, this assertive morality consisting of righteousness, as he and other founding fathers saw it, also consisting of power, accumulated by any means and deployed according to his and other founding fathers' discretionary views. They saw these two, righteousness and power, as the twin pillars upon which he, Thomas Jefferson, effectively founded the Conservative Party, which is more or less today the Republican Party in America. This view of conservatism gave rise to the idea of America as the shining city on the hill, the exalted example the rest of humanity would look up to. In Thomas Jefferson's mind, America's education out of Europe's experiences must entail the knowledge of what to take in as well as what to reject. For example, he rejected post-Renaissance European values. He abhorred Europe's relaxed mixing of the genders and races, also its lack of reverence for patriarchs and liberal sexual attitudes, which is interesting for a man who in his 40s began a liaison with a 16-year-old slave who was the half-sister of his deceased wife. Distilled to its core, Jefferson's view of what America needed to get out of Europe was to absorb the heights of modern European culture and to reject what he saw as the old continent's moral descent. In the most blessed of the Patriarchs, Gordon Reed, or Professor Annette Gordon Reed and Professor Peter Onuf, give us neither a biography nor an analysis of Thomas Jefferson's legacy. Their book is a voyage into the man's thinking through his papers, letters, and actions, decisions. The two authors they leave aside chronology. We jump between different stages of Thomas Jefferson's life. Our markers along the way are the themes the authors reckon dominated Jefferson's thinking, shaped his views, and directed his choices. Slavery is the most important of these themes. Annette Gordon Reed and Peter Onuf devote a quarter of the book to dissecting the flagrant contradictions between Thomas Jefferson's writings on liberty and his ownership of slaves, including ones who quite likely some would say almost certainly were his own sons. The objective is far from condemning the man. These are authors who, after decades of studying Thomas Jefferson, are clearly in awe of their subject. Yet, their admiration and strong feelings do not lead them to rosy assessments. They do not hide behind ascribing his actions to the mores and traditions of the time. Though they repeatedly say that Thomas Jefferson was a product of his time and environment, they make it clear that he repeatedly chose to ignore the winds of change. Often, they hint he lacked the courage to lead in action the changes his ideals and writings advocated. The authors stop at the several moments in his life, most notably his years in Paris at the cusp of the French Revolution, in which he clearly saw that the world was moving beyond the social order into which he was born. And yet, invariably, in these moments, Thomas Jefferson ignored the opportunity to ride these waves of transformation. He saw that slavery was both an illness that resided in the then nascent American socio-political system, as well as a source of future conflict between the slavery-opposing northern states and the southern states whose economies depended on it. But he shied away from fighting it. Here, presenting Thomas Jefferson's foresight about the future of the political project that is America, that he helped shape, transcends the ills of the institution of slavery. This discussion here casts light on the path, the different routes that Thomas Jefferson saw as potential ones for the new country to continue being an extension of Britain, but on a grander scale, or to pursue a continental, say European identity, becoming a Europe rather than a Britain on the other shore of the Atlantic, or the choice that he strongly believed in to make tangible the ideals and aspirations of the settlers who had left Europe, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and sought to create a new form of society in this new world. We read about America's mission, the ideals that the shining city on the hill embodies, what it has to achieve, the pitfalls it should avoid, and the perils in the early 19th century that could diminish the promise of that mission. Reflecting on these routes that the American Republic could have taken and comparing them to what actually happened in the ensuing 2 centuries would tempt many readers to leave Thomas Jefferson's thinking for a bit and look at the American Republic's actual legacy and its state today. But going back to the book, Gordon Reed and Peter Onuf show us the evolution of Thomas Jefferson's thinking about America's place in the world, the prospects of expanding the Republic westward, towards the West, with all the political, economic, military, and moral challenges associated with that expansion. And interestingly, they show us how or whether religion and early Americans' understanding of the divine fits within what the founding fathers thought of the meaning of America. Is America blessed by God? Isn't that a perpetuation of a form of religious thinking that America supposedly repudiates? Often when it comes to sensitive issues such as Jefferson's own beliefs, the authors leave it to Thomas Jefferson to explain himself. Jefferson's words on religion, the nature of God, the meaning of the message of Jesus Christ, and the role of religion in general in society, his words on all of these are intriguing. He shows us how he mixes disciplines, ideas, and experiences to form complex and innovative definitions and understandings. But he does not explain himself fully, and certainly does not reveal the inner core of his beliefs. As much as he was clear and unequivocal in contributing to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was abstract and elusive when it comes to his personal beliefs. He takes us on an intellectual tour, but there is not a specific destination. It is likely that Thomas Jefferson, the politician, thinking about his positioning before and after his presidential terms, was concerned about the harm that Thomas Jefferson, the thinker, could do to him. Gordon Reed and Onuf situate their presentation of Thomas Jefferson's views on religion in a section they call the Enthusiast. Jefferson was hardly an enthusiast when it comes to faith in its traditional form or traditional understanding. Relative to other founding fathers, especially the two that he is often associated with, George Washington and Alexander Hamilton, Jefferson was not overflowing with political fervor or passion for any ideology. His defining characteristics were his intellectuality, his consistent preference for reasoning and argumentation. Perhaps the enthusiast in Jefferson was fired up by culture and the arts. This is the section in which the authors introduce us to Thomas Jefferson, the lover and critic of music and architecture. Based on what they tell us, his taste was highly refined, though limited. He knew what he liked, stuck to it, and sought it performed by the best in class. And if those were in Europe, he would grudgingly admit that in the world of art and culture, Europe was far ahead of his young country. Architecture was different. Thomas Jefferson approached it not just for indulgence and transcendence, and not just as a form of science and art, but as one of the most influential ways to manifest certain values and to project power. The authors devote big sections of the book to examining how he designated his estate in Virginia, Monticello, how separated his private quarters were from the rest of the mansion, which was almost always swamped by visitors who came to listen to the great man, and what those design preferences reveal about his own character. But the important factor in this discussion is how he combined his views of what America means, the significance of the political project that he championed, with what he absorbed of the French and, by extension, the European usage of architecture to demonstrate power. This is a very intriguing discussion, even for readers familiar with Thomas Jefferson's writings and with the history of America's formative years. Annette, Gordon Reed, and Peter Onuf resist casting a judgment on Jefferson. Many, after reading tens of thousands of words on the man, the politician, and the thinker, would find that disappointing. After the many contradictions, ascent to greatness and descent to depravity, and vague expositions, hiding as much as they are revealing, readers would want a conclusion, would want a closure. But I think the author's approach is wise. The book is not a trial of Thomas Jefferson. It is a voyage into his mind. Readers with a penchant for philosophy, appreciation of the complexity of human thinking, sympathy for failings and weaknesses, and with admiration for cultural refinement will enjoy this journey. They will get an understanding of, rather than a verdict on, one of the finest minds in the late 18th and early 20th century, not just in America, in the world.